This video is all about the circulatory system. By the end of it, you should be able to describe the parts and functions of the circulatory system and answer each one of these essential questions. What is the main function of the system? What are the parts of the system and their functions? What specialized cells and tissues are parts of the circulatory system? And what other organ systems might interact with the circulatory system and how? So there's a lot of important vocabulary that goes along with learning each of the body systems. For the circulatory system, we're going to be learning about the heart and all of its parts, including the septum, the atrium, the ventricles, the valves, and the pacemaker, along with the arteries, veins, and capillaries. And then our blood is going to have plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. The main function of the circulatory system is transportation. It's basically your body's highway. It moves all of the important nutrients you get from your food, any waste products that are created from breaking down that food, and other substances throughout your body. Your heart has a lot of main parts. So when you think of a heart, you probably aren't looking at this kind of a heart. So the heart's main job is it's a big pump. It pumps blood throughout your body. The septum is the muscle in between the two sides that separates the right and the left sides of the heart. That's really important because one side of the heart has oxygen-rich blood and the other side of the heart has deoxygenated or oxygen-poor blood. And we don't want them to mix up because it's not a very efficient system if those two kinds of blood are getting mixed together. Each side of the heart has two chambers. So the right side has an upper and a lower chamber, and so does the left side, upper and lower. So there's 4 total chambers in our hearts. All mammals and birds have 4 total chambers. The atrium are the upper chambers that receive blood. So this left atrium receives oxygen-rich blood from your lungs. This right atrium receives deoxygenated blood or blood that has had the oxygen taken out of it from your body. The ventricles are the lower chambers. They pump blood away from the heart. So the ventricle on the right side goes to your lungs to get oxygen, picks up oxygen and comes back in through the left atrium. The left ventricle pumps this oxygen-rich blood all through your body, through the aorta and the other blood vessels. So it's really, really important, again, that those two types of blood remain unmixed together, and that's why that septum is so important. One way that I remember the atria are on the top and the ventricles are on the bottom is that comes before V in the alphabet. So the blood's going to flow from A to V, or from the upper to the lower chambers. The valve right here separates each atrium and ventricle. And again, this is really important to keep blood moving in the right direction. When your heart squeezes as it contracts, some of that blood might go backwards unless there's a valve there to stop it. So we want to make sure all the blood has a one-way flow through the heart so that it goes to the right spot in the body. We're going to come back to this heart diagram later. You're not expected to memorize it, but it's good to become familiar with it. The pacemaker is a special tissue in the right atrium that produces electrical impulses, and they control the contractions in your heart. It's literally like a mini battery that gets these electrical impulses from your nervous system that tell your heart when to beat. If you are an older person whose heart has problems, or even a younger person who has heart problems, you might need an artificial pacemaker. That's when the doctor goes in and inserts a little it's almost like a battery, and it sends little shocks so that it will pulse and cause that person's heart to beat. Sometimes it's not because their heart is going to stop beating, it's because it needs to beat in a regular rhythm, a regular and a consistent rhythm. And the pacemaker that the person has, that artificial one, will only go off if it's not in rhythm, so it doesn't do it every single time. All right, some facts about your heart. It's about 11 ounces on average, but your heart pumps 2,000 gallons of blood through 60,000 miles of blood vessels each day. Can you imagine 2,000 gallons? How many milk jugs is that? That is ridiculous. Your heart is a very hardworking part of your body. Your heart actually creates enough energy to drive a truck 20 miles. In a lifetime, that's equivalent to going all the way to the moon and back. The heart pumps blood to almost all of your body's 75 trillion cells. Only the corneas in your eyes receive no blood supply. That's the outside part of your eye that protects it. All right, on to blood vessels. We have two major types of blood vessels and then the smaller ones. So arteries are really big blood vessels and they carry blood away from the heart. Most of the time, these are full of oxygen-rich blood, but the ones that carry it away to go to the lungs would be full of deoxygenated blood. So arteries away, they both start with the letter A. You can feel your pulse in your arteries because the blood has just been pumped from your heart, so your blood pressure is very strong. You can find arteries right underneath your jawline, close to your trachea, and you can also find them in your wrists, and there's other places on the body that you can also find arteries, but those are the easiest ones to find your pulse. Arteries have a really thick layer of smooth muscle tissue, and that allows your body to control where that oxygen-rich blood goes. So, for example, if you are out on a run or you're working really hard, the arteries that are going to your muscles will get wider and wider to let that oxygen go to your muscles that are working hard, and it'll move the blood away from your digestive organs. And it might also move blood to your skin to help you cool off, which is why you might look red or flushed when you're working out. On the other hand, if you're just going to sit down and have a huge meal like Thanksgiving, then your blood is going to be shunted to your internal organs so that your body can digest all that food and get all of that oxygenated blood where it needs to go. And it would be really hard for you to get up after a huge meal and run because all of that blood is going towards your internal organs. The other thing to know is that if someone has heart disease, there's some plaque that can build up on arteries that can cause a narrowing or a constriction of blood flow, and that's when somebody might have to go in and get a shunt or a stent, or they might have to have some kind of other surgery to go around that blocked blood flow. And that's why eating healthy, heart healthy, exercising, all of that helps keep your arteries nice and strong and healthy. Veins are the other large blood vessel, and they carry blood to the heart. So they have the same structure, but they're thinner, and they also have valves that keep the blood going towards the heart. So because arteries are usually coming right from the heart, there's a lot of blood pressure. But if you imagine that the blood from your heart went all the way down to your toes through all of these arteries, and now it needs to make its way back up to your heart, especially if you're standing up, it has to fight against gravity to get back up there, and there's not as much blood pressure. So those veins have little valves that basically stop the blood from going backwards down into your legs and your ankles. We want to make sure that blood keeps going where it needs to go. Capillaries, these are the tiny little blood vessels. So basically they're in between arteries and veins, and they're where any kind of nutrient or oxygen exchange happens between the bloodstream and individual cells. So you have capillaries literally everywhere in your body because everywhere in your body needs oxygen. And so anytime that you get a cut on your fingers or your leg or whatever, you're usually cutting through those little tiny blood vessels, those capillaries. And only if it gets into the bigger arteries and veins do you actually have a problem. This bottom picture actually shows how small they are. This is one red blood cell that kind of has to fold to fit through a capillary, so it's very flexible and bendy, so it can actually fit through that single line or single lane artery. So lots of these things are exchanged. In your lungs, you are full of capillaries so that all of that oxygen from your lungs can hop into your bloodstream and all the carbon dioxide from your body can hop out and you can breathe it out. The same thing happens in your digestive system. All the good nutrients from the food that you eat hop into your bloodstream in your small intestine, and the waste products hop back in either during your small or your large intestine, and they get carried to other organs that get rid of those waste products. And this happens through diffusion. We'll talk about diffusion soon. So your blood circulation basically has two big loops with your heart in the middle. In the first loop, the blood goes from the heart to the lungs and back again. So it's a really short loop. But this blood is coming right here from your right atrium to your right ventricle, and then it comes up here and it goes right to your left lung and to your right lung. It drops off that carbon dioxide, picks up oxygen, and then it comes back through these veins to the left side of your heart, where it gets pumped into the left atrium, the left ventricle, and then these blood vessels carry this oxygen-rich blood to your whole body. You have a large artery that goes up to the upper part of your body, and then one that goes down to the lower part of your body. So again, if you kind of think about that heart diagram, and you look at the animation on the right, it's going to show you the flow of the of the heart through the blood, and how those valves will actually close in order to keep the blood going in one direction. Your heart is actually almost directly in the center of your chest, but we feel it beating more on the left side because this left ventricle is so big. And you might be confused why I'm using the word left when it looks like it's on the right side. It's because if you were the surgeon looking at someone's heart from the outside, it would be on their left side. So imagine that the left side of their body is over here. You're looking at them face front, and the right side of their body is over here. So it's just reversed, right? So kind of keep that in mind as you're thinking about left and right sides of the heart. All right, on to blood. The blood basically carries everything around. So the heart pumps the blood, but the blood actually carries it. So it's the liquid highway, carries all of our nutrients, our waste, and other things throughout the body. We have red blood cells, we have white blood cells, and we have platelets and plasma. One blood cell can make the entire trip from your heart and back in less than 1 minute. That's pretty darn fast. Your heart beats between 75 to 85 times a minute. That's at rest. If you're active, it's going to be a lot more than that. It pumps about 5 liters of blood per minute, enough to fill 30 swimming pools in 1 year. The left ventricle works 6 times harder than the right ventricle because it has to pump blood to every part of your body. The right side only has to go to your lungs. That's why we feel it better on the left side of our chest, even though it's in the middle. So what's in our blood? More than half of our blood, 55%, is actually liquid. It's called plasma, so it's a little bit thicker than water, and it contains some special things. And then we have 45% blood cells, made up of red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Most people on average have between 4 to 6 liters of blood at a time in their body. Plasma is the liquid part. 90% of it is water. 10% is other stuff that's all dissolved. My slideshow is messed up here, but basically it's anything that could be in your blood. So any kind of dissolved nutrients like proteins or glucose, which is sugar, fats or vitamins, minerals, things like that. It also carries hormones around your body. So anytime that your body needs to send a chemical messenger to another part, that's a hormone. It also has waste products that get moved around. So any parts of your body that are they're doing respiration and they're creating these waste products, they're going to basically be moved through your plasma as well. Your red blood cells, or your RBCs, carry oxygen to your body cells. 95% of your blood cells are red blood cells. They are flexible, disc-shaped, and they're made in your bones, your big long bones, like your femur and your humerus. Red blood cells contain a lot of hemoglobin, which is a protein that contains iron, and that can attach to oxygen. With oxygen, it is bright red like this. Without oxygen, it is dark red. It is not blue or purple, although it can look that way when it's in your body. It just is darker because it doesn't have any oxygen. So it's either bright red or dark red. Red blood cells only live about 120 days. 2 million of them die every second, and they go to the liver to be decomposed, basically, and recycled. White blood cells are your body's army, the disease fighters that attack and kill any kind of bacteria or viruses that can make you sick. Only 3% of your blood cells are white blood cells. They're also made in your bone marrow, which is the inside part of your bones. They're 2 times bigger than red blood cells, and they can live for a few days to a few months. Now, because they do carry immune properties, they can reproduce really quickly. If you do get sick, you're going to have a lot more white blood cells, which is why if you if you are sick, then they might do a red blood cell or a white blood cell count to see how many white blood cells are going on in your body, because it's your body's way of fighting disease. So when you are sick, you're going to have more. All right, platelets are really cool. They're basically fragments of cells. They're not whole cells, but they help to make a blood clot. And that blood clot kind of makes a fibery mesh that traps blood cells and the plasma when you're cut or bruised. So whenever you get a cut and your body is going to send these platelets here, it's going to make a scab. And some plasma might leak through for a little bit, which is why you might see a little bit of oozing. But eventually it's going to make a strong enough barrier that it will make a scab. And then the skin underneath will heal up, and then that scab will fall off. Only 2% of blood cells are platelets. They live for less than 10 days. If you want to take a second to draw this, you can. You are not expected to memorize any of this, but some people are going to find it more interesting than others. When I drew this in, I used a regular looking heart, even though it's not really the same as the heart that's in your chest. It will work. So it has bigger spaces at the top and smaller at the bottom. So again, remember how it's flip-flopped. So we have the right side over here and the left side over here, starting with the atrium and then through the right ventricle. This is where that valve would be. This dark line in the middle is the septum. So the blood goes into the right atrium. This is coming from your body. It's colored blue, even though it's not really blue, dark red. And then it goes down into your right ventricle. It goes all the way to your lungs. This is going through what's called your pulmonary arteries, full of carbon dioxide, into your lungs where all those capillaries are. It exchanges the carbon dioxide for oxygen, picks up all this oxygen, comes back to the heart through the pulmonary vein. The word pulmonary means lungs, so the arteries carry blood away from the heart to the lungs. The veins carry blood from the lungs to the heart. Most of the time in your body, arteries are going to be full of oxygen and veins will be full of CO2. The ones that are going to and from the lungs are just the reverse. So it goes into your left atrium through that valve into your left ventricle, has a very strong push out through what's called your aorta, which is your biggest artery in your body. And then there's part of your aorta that goes up to the upper body, part that goes down to the lower body, full of oxygen, sends it to all your body cells where those capillaries exchange the oxygen for CO2, and then it comes back to your heart through what's called the vena cava, which is the biggest vein in your body, gets dumped into your right atrium, and it starts the loop all over again. So here are your essential questions. Hopefully you can answer the main function of the circulatory system. What are the main parts of or organs of the circulatory system, and what do they do? What kind of specialized tissues or cells are part of that circulatory system, and then any other organ systems that interact with the circulatory system and how they do that.